big rush right at the last minute, hopefully.
Yeah. But you're not expecting many.
I have no idea.
Oh.
No, we didn't have any registration. Didn't ask anyone to register.
We never reached. There were a few things that I like to get my own book because I put the corners down and I,
Yeah.
you know, there were a few things here.
My name's Patty, by the way. I don't know that we've ever met before.
My name is Ruth Friedman. I'm actually an outsider.
Oh, okay, a self-described
I'm a member
outsider.
of the book group
Mhm.
that Jane leads,
Okay,
but I'm not a member.
that's nice to meet you, Ruth. We have people in Torah Study who come for years and years every Saturday. They're not members.
Rivka.
Makes me wonder why I pay this money.
I did walk into a building, hold on. Let me sign
Support
off.
the building. Whatever else.
Yeah, yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for the reminder, Jackie. Well, NPR likes it, the New York Times likes it, Washington Post loves it.
Are you in charge of it?
I'm in charge today.
Okay. I'm just.
I'm Patty.
Just got it out of the library,
Okay.
so just started reading it.
Uh-huh.
But I got very excited in chapter 2. Where they're talking about waiting for Vicky Katz from Cleveland.
Uh-huh. Great.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, what page was that on?
So.
There's probably gonna be
Know who he is?
spoilers.
I mean, he
He was
was
a real
person.
He was a real person.
And do you know that he is the father of Joel Gray?
Oh, the Joel Gray, really?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
That's cool.
He was Joel Katz, who went to Heights High School, my sister's best friend, dated
This is somebody's secret.
Joel Katz.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So I was very excited about that. And I figured also, younger people have no idea that
Well, there are some other names that
I'm
are
not feeling so great,
are
so
better
I'm
named.
sorry.
Chick
I
Webb
know I'm
and
ducking out after a few minutes. Okay. I've cold.
not the same.
It's just one of those. Yep. Yeah. Too much in and out of cold and warm and
children. You're around a lot of kids, aren't you?
not as many as the teachers are, but
Oh,
they do come in the library.
because I see your picture out there in the lobby with a lot of children around. Like, wow.
Yeah, that was really fun because that was last year's. Now it's escaping me if it's 3rd grade or 4th grade. One of their projects in TLC was to do something to teach people about the Via Hafta, the prayer. So there were kids who were doing a piece of art, and there were kids who were doing a video, and this particular group of kids put together a book, which Dina Rock, our TLC director, then took to Shutterfly or whatever and had it printed out as a real book. And she said, we'd like to give this to the library. Can we all take a picture with you? And I said, absolutely, I would love to have that in the library. That is an important book for us to have. And so that was really fun. So I hope they do something like that again this year. It would be a really neat.
Did you give him a number from your decimal
system and.
On the book, I did, but
Good,
not to
good.
them, they didn't. But, yeah, it was very fun
It's
to have.
official.
It's official.
I like that.
Well,
Oh, good.
so take a seat.
We might have to grab a couple
And,
chairs as people
yeah.
come in.
Feel free to. You can, there's a seat empty right here. Oh, hi, Jody.
That's okay.
There's two seats.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Rose.
there's two seats empty.
Hi, guys.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
We're good. It's been a while.
Yeah, good to be
I'm
seen.
in jet lag version of myself, so I'm an observer.
Feeling okay? Oh, your body parts just fine.
Glad you're here.
Walking around, and all of a sudden, my knee was just burning
Oh,
and
there's gonna be
paining.
spoilers. We're just starting and you can't really talk about
I
it.
mean, what can you do? You know, it's a book review. You're expected to have read it, and if you
That's your
haven't,
favorite. Then you have to accept it.
exactly.
She just showed you, didn't she?
For sure, for sure.
Okay.
My finger is still infected.
It's still infected now.
Well, someone should never ask me how my finger is, right? It's a bad one.
I will tell them. I didn't expect her to be that graphic. Listen.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure there will be other people joining us, which I very much hope. And this is being live streamed, and I've been instructed to say, "Hi, Mom." Oh. She's watching in Scottsdale, so I've said it.
Scottsdale.
Yes.
Nice.
So my name is Jane Rothstein, for those of you who don't know me. I am the librarian and archivist here at the Temple-Tifereth Israel, and we are fortunate to have a vibrant, engaging monthly book group. And we've been meeting, they started meeting back up online during the pandemic, and then, I'd say a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, we started meeting in person with a couple of people zooming in with us. There are a couple of people who usually can't make it here. And I'm really happy today that we can do this on a Sunday where we can partner up with the Temple's Racial Justice Task Force. This is Patty London. She's one of the co-chairs of that task force. And I met Patty when I worked at Apple Tree Books, and Patty was a customer, and Patty informed me that she liked to read all of the short books in the short list for the Booker Prize, and I was extremely impressed by that.
It's a yearly thing.
Yes, that's a yearly thing. So we chose for this meeting to read James McBride's new book, The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store, which I'm assuming the majority of you have read, at least part of. And if you haven't, you can do exchanges at the end of books that you've taken out of the library that you're returning and someone else will want to take out. So I am not feeling well, so I am going to make a couple of announcements and then get Patty started, and then I'm going to duck out before I spread more of my cold germs at you. If you would like to take books out, please go into the library after your discussion. We have a great front table of new fiction and nonfiction. Our adult fiction, nonfiction, and mystery sections are in great shape, and I'm really trying to bring in both new Jewish fiction and nonfiction and books that speak to the kinds of issues that we're talking about in the temple today. So on the front table, for example, you'll notice a few very different books about Israel. We have a whole section, the 956.94s are all Israel, history of Israel. So if you want more information, you can go there as well. So next month, we're going to be meeting on December 13th, which is a Wednesday at 1 p.m. That's our regularly scheduled time, the second Wednesday of the month, in the library. And we're going to be reading Cantica by Elizabeth Graver. This book is a good old-fashioned yet new family saga about a Sephardic family from Istanbul, Constantinople, over generations and centuries. I think this book is going to at least be nominated for a National Jewish Book Award. It's entirely possible it will win, and as well as for the Association for Jewish Libraries Fiction Award. So it's a really strong contender for that. I have this copy if anyone wants to take it out. Hold on just a moment. We have sign-out sheets. They are on the front table as well. I'd like you to very legibly write out your name and your email address, and at the bottom you'll just put the book's title and the 5-digit barcode that's on the back of the book. It's in this digit number is in here. Sometimes, it's up at a corner. Or, new styles, old styles, but that's where it is. And we have a bin with pencils and a stack of these on the front table. It's a beautiful table that is from the Old Silver Library, so go and admire. We're still working on January, trying to figure out what we're going to read in the new year. So if anyone has suggestions, please let me know. I'm going to send around a sign-up sheet. If you would like, you are not required to, but if you would like to receive emails from me about our book group, please give me your name and your email address, and I'll make Patty put it on my desk when she leaves. And I am also going to leave you some cards that have my email address on and my direct phone number in case anyone has a question. And that's it. Does anyone have any questions for me about housekeeping things before I depart? All right. Thank you so much. This is a great turnout. I'm really happy. Welcome, live stream people. Hi, Mom. I'm going home to have some of my sister's leek soup. Just so you know, Mom. Thank you all for coming, and here's Patty London.
Thanks, Jane. I'll see you.
Thank you.
I'll see you in a couple Saturdays.
Yes. Oh, yes, we have lunch.
We have lunch. And there's an extra seat here. Come on in. There's plenty of room.
Yes. Yep. Yep. You can take it. Just use that spoon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi. Wow. Thanks so much for having this on Sunday. Also, I still have to work. It's hard to get here during the week, but I always do kind of watch to see what the books are that Jane's recommending and pick them up on my own because they're always worth a read. For those who have read this, it's pretty clearly a very suspenseful mystery, and I'm sorry if you haven't finished it because we probably will spoil the mystery, but how you get there is really important. That all the pieces that sort of fall into place just very satisfyingly, I have to say for myself, at the end. These storyline threads all sort of weave together and are resolved, I thought, quite nicely and not too nicely, because if it's like too pat, then it loses that authenticity that makes the book good. So you'll have to read it even if you know the ending. And I just finished it myself this morning. We went down to Hocking Hills for a couple of nights just to see the stars and breathe air, like fresh air. And so it's sort of nice to have read this in an atmosphere of tranquility, and I sort of felt the background of Pennsylvania hill country, and sort of the era in the 1930s was, I think, a really good choice for this particular author, because there was a lot going on in the world. There was a lot going on here, even in small town America. And so it's sort of a microcosm of larger issues that were happening then. And you might have noticed how the author has the narrator zoom back from today's day when they make a couple of side comments about what the future will bring and how it will be impacted by events from the 1930s. So let me ask if anyone's ever read James McBride before.
Yes.
A lot of people, yeah. What books do you guys recall, or which
The one
did you
about
enjoy?
water, the
The
color.
color
A Color of Water, his memoir.
Yeah.
Yeah, of his mother.
And
Big
Deacon King Kong. Yeah.
That one I listened to,
Oh, yeah.
which
and
was
there's-
really fun.
Yeah, there's one other one.
Good Lord Bird.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
about the famous abolitionist, John Brown.
yeah.
Yeah, that was,
Yeah.
all of his books are so good.
Yes.
He has a very distinctive style of writing that I felt was conducive to the characters in this story especially, because they all seem so much larger than life, and I think that's true, definitely Deacon King Kong. Those are all really larger than life characters. I felt like the people in this story were ones I would want to hang out with. You know, I wished I could have.
Well, some of them.
Yeah,
I'll let the
there were a
doctor go.
couple.
Yeah.
There were a couple of that, which he was sort of even-handed to a point of like there's bad seeds in all characters, right? The Reverend character from the Chicken Hill community, Snooks, Spraggins, something like that. That Reverend, yeah, he seemed to come off as a little shady, and as the story went on, he kept getting shadier, was responsible for sort of exposing details about the very heart of the book, which is an incident that doesn't happen for the longest time. So he wasn't that great of a character. And of course, Son of Man was probably the scariest character, and the references to him were sort of, what do they call that,
Prescient? Oh, pre-shadowing.
prescient, but pre-shadowing. Yeah, the little dropped hints about the Son of Man. I'm supposed to stay close to this, sorry, live streamers. That you knew to watch for him later. It was clear that he was going to make an appearance, and it was going to be relevant and important later. So, and Doc Roberts,
Yes, right.
who
the doctor.
probably wasn't as evil as he was typical
Oh,
of people during that day. Disagree?
yes.
We have a microphone, so nobody misses that.
Oh, I don't have anything that important to say.
Of course you do.
No,
I'm
I
not
don't.
talking for an hour. I
No.
could easily,
I
but
don't know if this is,
He's not.
no, I think the doc was evil. I mean, look what he did to, I can't pronounce her name.
Hona?
Yeah, Hona.
Yeah.
And that was pure evil. And he just wasn't a nice man in my mind.
Right.
And I'm done with this.
Does anyone have anything else to say about Doc Roberts? He seemed to me a man who would take advantage of a situation, and I think in the recent years, a lot of those have been exposed as a lot more ubiquitous than we like to think.
Can I ask if
Yeah.
Pottstown is a real place? Or if it was fiction?
You know what? I did see a review. I think it was
There is a
was from NPR or the Times. It said that he traveled. Let me see if I can find that quickly, or maybe it was from the Post. He traveled back and forth from Pennsylvania frequently.
The author?
I can't put it right, McBride,
Right.
and just talked to people. So I don't know if he used Pottstown as a fill-in for just.
He's not a native of that area. I don't know where he was born.
I don't remember where he's from, or if it would even tell us.
Because it does remind me, because I've traveled back and forth that way a number of times also, and it reminds me of a lot of little coal towns or towns that were established 100 years ago. And his also depiction of the state hospital was so amazing. It was just exactly like one we had in, the state hospital was just like one we had in Buffalo. I mean, it was a New York State Hospital for, I don't know if it was the, for
Mentally insane.
mentally insane people, and it was a
Whatever
real
term it was
warehouse.
called is probably not appropriate or used anymore, but
That's
that's,
exactly
That's
right.
what it was called.
That's exactly right. But I remember when the law came that they were gonna shut those down, and people began being dispersed into the community.
Yeah.
People were really afraid of that. It was a really strange time.
yeah. You know where people are now who have mental illness?
On the
Yeah,
street.
homeless.
Yeah, they're in
Homeless.
county,
I think
they're in
they're
county
homeless.
jail. They're
Right.
my clients, and they're people who,
Or
people
homeless shelters.
don't know, I'm a public defender, and I am on the mental health division unit of my office, so it's 5 of us, and we take all serious mental illness or developmentally delayed clients. So, yeah, if people are off their meds and unstable, where do they go? They go to jail.
Right.
Do you think anybody gets any better sitting in jail?
No.
No.
And
There is a
there's-
Pottstown.
There is?
There is a Pottstown, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Did it have, was that a hurricane that blew through?
Uh,
In the story, that's how
A hurricane
it
or a
opens
tornado.
and
It's
ends.
kind of far from the Atlantic to have.
Right.
It's in Middle Pennsylvania. North of Philadelphia. It exists. Pottstown.
So it's,
Yeah, it is.
so it could be close to the ocean.
Okay, maybe.
Let's see what they called it, because
So what is the solution
Addresses
for,
were 2 months ago.
for people that used to
You have a better
to
recall than I
be incarcerated, who are now incarcerated, and who used to,
well, maybe we should have
a guardian that,
a special hospital-like setting. Like, I don't think in Europe people are just locked up when they're off their medications. Because a lot of clients that I represent, they don't commit necessarily like violent offenses. They're really just, low-level crimes because of their mental illness and they don't understand, or they're in an argument with a family member or a significant other and they don't know how to manage themselves.
Are there shelters in the Cleveland area for the mentally ill?
No, it's the jail.
Seriously?
I am serious.
Because my daughter works with homeless people in New York, and they run a shelter for mentally ill and addicted men in the building in which she works.
We have a hospital, North Coast Behavioral Hospital, and it's down close to the Bedford Reservation. But I've been there many times visiting people. That is for people who are either there for restoration, if they're there forensically, like they have a criminal matter, and they're sent there for restoration so that they can be stabilized and then sent back. But they can't even get out of jail and get there unless they are so far gone that the hospital will take them. Like, there's a really high standard of incompetency before we can send them there. But anybody who's just sort of off their meds and not doing very well, they go to the 7th floor of the jail,
Oh, okay.
which is a psychiatric unit, but it is not like a hospital
No.
setting whatsoever.
No, that's terrible.
Do they get any psychiatric treatment when they're in jail?
There is a doctor who prescribes, he's with Metro Health Hospital, and prescribes their medication, but
Yeah.
I don't want to get too far off course, but I'll tell you that the protocol for medication is not the same as if they were in the community or at North Coast Hospital. They have budget concerns, and you might not get the exact medication that works best for you while you're there.
Can we get back to the book?
Yeah, yeah. Does anyone have a question about the book?
Yeah, well, I was just gonna make a comment about the dock, and I wanted to get back
Yeah.
As far as the, do I need that?
Well, people are
it's not-
listening, and
it's
I
not
want them to be able to,
On live streaming,
it looks like it's on for the, because the light's on and the little numbers are on there, just like on this one.
All right, I'll keep it. I don't think the doc was a very good person. I think he was in the Ku Klux Klan, which tells something about what he felt about people who are not like him. He didn't always respect the people he treated, nor did he want to treat everyone. Going back, and going forward, the poor boy, what was he, Dodo?
Dodo.
Dodo, yes. Look what he did to him, and also to Hannah.
He tried to rape her.
He tried, well, the assumption is
That he just tried.
he
but
tried
we
to
don't
rape
know.
her.
Yeah, and
He
Dodo
had-
stopped it.
he-
Right.
Yeah, from what we read, it seems like he had his hands on her, under her clothes. And that's when Dodo tried to intervene.
Right, right.
And that's when the doctor called, he was not a good person.
No, not in
No.
any
at
way.
all. So somebody mentioned something about Doc, that he was good at something. No, he was not a good person.
That was,
You know, what I had to say was, he was probably a lot more typical of people during his time. In his views of immigrants and black people and women,
And Jews.
he didn't,
Jews.
and Jews.
I
He
know-
just, he pretty much fit, he was the prototype for the biased, prejudiced
I think it depends.
American.
I think it depends where he lived and where he came from, from his upbringing, from his just mentality. I don't think that, I don't know if it was typical for the times.
It was.
It was.
It
Well,
was.
Look, I came from a small town. There were 2 doctors in town, and they took care of everybody.
I came from a small town too also, and we didn't have that in Iowa.
Yeah.
They didn't have what in Iowa?
Somebody like Doc Roberts. I mean,
But they did all across the South, I promise you that.
Well, I'm sure
Well,
they did
yeah,
in the
that's
South,
why I
but
said it
he's not in the
depends where
South.
you came from and how
Yeah.
you were brought up and what your views were and your perceptions were of certain people, and
But there's a Ku Klux Klan,
Right.
and he's a member of that. So-
Right.
And this is the
Right.
North.
No, we're all.
that's right.
This is
We are
Pennsylvania.
in agreement with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I think he felt he was entitled,
Well, yeah.
and I think he sort of picked on Hannah because they had something in common,
Their foot.
their foot. So I think that in his mentality, he thought, well, he could, his entitlement, he could take advantage of her.
Okay, so if we wanted to look at the sympathetic parts of Doc Roberts for just a moment,
Yep.
as we look back in time in his high school years, he was
Yeah.
often rejected in very
Yes.
humiliating ways.
Right.
And he was bookish and nerdy and not the football star. It was his brother who sort of shone all the time. Anyways, when he saw Hannah, I felt like she it wasn't just that, but he just fell in love with her and didn't know how to express himself. He didn't really have the social skills to speak with her, and of course he had it in his head that she'll convert. Of course she would. Why wouldn't she? When he was fantasizing about the life he could have with this young woman he was so attracted to. So you could feel a little bit knowing how he was raised, and he was raised thinking your family's from the Mayflower, you've been here hundreds of years, you have some kind of entitlement, like you said, to whatever just desserts are here in town, they should be yours and not all these new people, whoever they are. I think that one piece of this, and as an aside, it was a hurricane. Hurricane Agnes came in shortly after they found the skeleton with the mezuzah, and we didn't have to worry about an ongoing investigation, and Malachi was long long gone by then, the best dancer in the world. So one piece that makes me think that the author intended him to be more representative of the way a lot of people thought, North and South. I think from the racial justice book discussion group we had, we read books for 3 solid years, and it became really clear that the North doesn't have anything on the South. They don't have a leg to stand on as far as like, well, we're not prejudiced. We don't have a Ku Klux Klan. No, they just passed laws to make sure everyone stayed in their place and lived in toxic neighborhoods, and I could go on and on. The North and South, nobody wins any awards for being
Just as guilty.
They just
Absolutely.
exhibited it in different ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So at one point, the author here talks about Doc Roberts' viewpoints, that his worldview was picked up. This is one of the moments where the narrator comes from the present day and like jumps into the story and says that those thoughts are what lead to people using violence and killing school children and buying guns and having this personal freedom and hatred toward immigrants and others. It's sort of toward the back. I don't know if I could just put my finger on it right away, but I think he was trying to say that there is a strain of thinking that runs right from the people who are socialized with that idea of entitlement and white privilege right through till today. Yeah, Malcolm.
I didn't feel it was particularly, I didn't find any, I guess, value or inclination to judge any of the characters per se. I think
We're just doing it for fun.
I think all of the common thread was all the characters suffered. I think the book was a strand or thread woven through many of the characters. I think the affection was another very strong theme or strand that was woven through the characters and their relationships to one another. If any of the characters was saintly, if you will, it was Hannah. But I think each of the characters had their flaws as well. I didn't find this book as satisfying as a couple of the other of McBride's books. I didn't feel that the characters were as well drawn out, or that the, I guess, storyline or plot wasn't as engaging. I just didn't feel like McBride put as much of himself into this book as the other, Deacon King Kong and Good Lord Bird in particular, I thought were more artfully drawn. And, when you read in the afterword, he goes into an explanation of a lot of what motivated in his own experience.
Right. Do you want to talk about that for a minute? Because I was going to raise that. That's where my tears, where my eyes got teary. I was just like,
I agree.
That was very heartfelt.
It shouldn't be that the author has to explain himself in an afterword for you to feel the impact of the book. At least that's my opinion about that. So it's almost, I don't know, an apology or a shortcoming of his writing, at least to me, that he didn't, it took his afterword for me to feel the impact of what motivated and what was the source of his inspiration for the book.
Yeah, I'm going to take that.
Do you want to sit up here next to me, Vivian?
No.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I don't know.
I just saw you shaking your head when he was talking.
Oh,
That's all the time.
yeah, we're here, for those who don't. What I'm missing, and we also happen to have the privilege of seeing James McBride in person at the library before we read the book. And he is first of all, a wonderful satirist. And I think you have to look at these characters as symbols. They come, and the way he's created them, you need patience to read this book, because only when I went through it for passages did I pick up on all the tiny details. And it was really very difficult to read that carefully, because it just jumps. It's like a parade of characters that are very hard to keep track of.
Right.
And so you need patience to appreciate them. Hannah, James McBride shared, it was inspired by his own grandmother, who he never knew. He knew her as, a shadow figure. She did have a grocery, and I believe it was in Pennsylvania, and he knew her as an unhappy woman. And he says, he said, fiction is magic, because you can invent a happy ending, and he wanted her to have a happy ending. So that's the basis of Hannah. She's a saint because that's how she was written, which I think is lovely. And I think there are other saints in this story, particularly the two boys. Their communication is heart-wrenching, and it is really when the book comes alive for me.
Yes.
It is a shaggy dog story to me until those two boys, those shaggy dogs, start talking to each other.
Monkey Pants and
Monkey
Dodo.
Boys in the institution.
And
How they started communicating.
Dodo and monkey pants.
Right.
And they're written in just the slightest details before you get to them, really. You meet Dodo with Nate, and and again, that little detail of his love for the boy is something you it starts in the beginning. It's really hard to follow, but because Nate is first of all, interestingly, the invisible man in this story. Those little hints are there. I mean, this book is written in breadcrumbs, and it's really very hard to unpack, and I had a hard time with it until about 3/4 of the way through.
Now, you did have to pay really close attention.
Pay attention, yeah.
I think that's why it was so satisfying to me as those threads started coming up again, because it was like, oh, I've been waiting to see what was going to happen from that. That pre-shadowing he's so good at. But he does sort of keep you in that suspense. You know right when Son of Man is stabbed, all of a sudden you're back in the parade. It was one of these stories where it all builds up to one moment in time, these hours of this Memorial Day when everything happens at once. So he does have to sort of shift back and forth. But I totally agree with your statement that things really picked up once those two boys were in the hospital. It became very suspenseful for me. I felt that, like, I wanted him out of there as soon as possible, so I didn't want to stop reading until we knew what was going to happen to
There are
him.
3 couples. It's Dodo and Monkey Pants. It's Hannah and Moshe.
And Nate and Natty.
Yes. And and that's where the story bounces. But boy, till you get there, it's a good thing he writes gorgeous sentences.
Yeah. So Deacon King Kong probably has half the numbers of characters that this story does.
But none of their names were you weren't able to remember and repeat their names because they were all unusual.
Oh, from Deacon King Kong.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
Forget
these
Monkey
people
Pants,
you
those
might
were-
meet for a minute, but then they pop back up.
Yes.
And there was a reason for them to pop up for that minute. And there are the relationships that lasted for a lifetime. Bernice was always there, sort of as a shadow behind Hannah, and the fact that she was so instrumental in the end of pulling, Fatty along, and Paper, the woman who really was the one really running the town. These are, I thought, all important people, but I also agree they weren't given the depth of, a character study. It was more, they were necessary as symbols to move the story forward and also explain the way the society was working then.
Another thing that McBride has is he has a wonderful sense of humor. And I didn't maybe I just missed it, but I didn't feel it was as evident in this book as, and even, and also when we heard him speak, I mean, he's very funny, off the cuff, and just a wonderful, spoke to us for an hour without prepared remarks.
Yeah.
And just was.
Well, he was a
really
journalist, I think, originally,
Yeah.
before he started writing, so that's good too.
Excuse me, go ahead.
I'm sorry, sir, I don't know your name.
Larry,
Larry, nice to meet you.
I think, I looked at this a little differently. I thought that, McBride doesn't name a book for no reason at all. And I believe that the star of this book is the icon of the Heaven and Earth grocery store. That this is the main thing that he wants you to focus on, and everything streams out of it. The neighbor who's shielding the kid, the proprietor, the people below the store that are getting the food for nothing. These are all different parts of like a radiance. And this is the star of the book, and he did it intentionally, obviously. Because if you look at his other books, the star of the book is either the name of the book or what he's focusing on. And it's not by happenstance that I felt that he took that because of all the things that come out of it. And the only thing that I thought it was gratuitous about is the mezuzah. I thought that was just thrown in for a little icing on the cake. And I thought that the epilogue was poorly handled. But, it was necessary, but poorly handled.
We had to learn how Dodo got along. We had to, but we didn't have 300 more pages to read about his life in the Low Country. What do you think about the different groups that congregated there? I mean, we find out later that even a lot of the socialists, the union men, were getting their lunches at the grocery store for free.
It was like a general store, and but it was more than a general store. I mean, lives revolved around it, either intentionally or inadvertently. And the whole thing with the water, everything in one way or another seemed to come out of this.
So I wondered about the title as well, and I thought about focusing on the grocery store, but I couldn't figure out why, excuse me, heaven and earth.
That's exactly what it is. It was the salt of the earth, the basis of the society, and the heaven were the different things that came out of it. The sheltering of the boy, the feeding of the poor, the things that people that came out of there and did their things throughout the city, and ultimately the doctor. Where there's a heaven, there's a hell.
That's
and
true.
So I think it was a masterstroke to use that title and to really use that as a stepping off point. He's a wonderful writer, and he deserved his characters, in my humble estimation, deserved a better fate than the epilogue. Somehow.
Right. Well, I was getting toward the end and wondering how is he going to wrap all this up in a few pages?
I'm glad he wasn't like Grisham.
I got the feeling that towards the end, he rushed it. I mean, again, I maybe wouldn't have minded reading another 100 pages, but I really felt that, maybe his editor said, okay, you got to get this to me now, and I felt that he rushed it, and that's why we got the epilogue.
It's got to end in 300 pages.
He hit the italics font and wrapped it up.
So.
Yeah. Well, as long as Addie found Nate again. That
Yes.
was important.
The store was sort of a haven of spiritual nourishment. People came there not only to get fed physically, but I think that because of Hannah, she had a way of really drawing people in and caring for them and loving them. And even though she herself wasn't perfect physically, that didn't really seem to matter. So, and then another thing I want to mention, different from but there was the character of Miggy. She was a home health. She was an aide at the sanitarium house place, and she was also a woman who told fortunes. She would go to her and you'd write something on a paper, and she would give you something. I think she wrote her prophecies on a piece of paper. But if you read that section where she's speaking, she's giving her story, she's speaking in a black dialect, and it is so beautiful. It's so beautifully written. It's almost poetic. Because I've read a lot of authors who try to do a black dialect, and it's really awful when you can't read it. But this flowed so beautifully. That was one of my favorite parts of the entire book.
And she sort of was the key to what Nate's background was. I mean, we knew a little bit from Fatty's time in prison that he'd learned Nate's last name was actually Love, but we didn't know the connection between the Logods. And that was like one kind of longish paragraph, maybe 2/3 of the page, and it was the entire backstory for Nate. Found out like that his father had killed his mother, and then he killed his father, and then he became like a hired gun, and finally ended up in prison after killing a rapist, which, you know, how bad of a guy could he be? But you just wonder, that's part of, I felt, the suspense of so much of this, is you wanted to know what was going on with Nate. You know, why did he have this rage, and what was he trying to control so tightly?
Yeah, he was a fascinating character, one of my favorites.
And that Miggy was the piece in between.
Miggy, that's right, she gave that background so beautifully.
Miggy, so you meet her through Paper. Paper was doing laundry and with her, and they would sort of trade off on that one family. And that's how they were trying to figure out how to break Dodo out of Penhurst.
Right.
They went to her because she knew a lot of Logods who worked there.
Yeah, why are they called Logods?
That's their last name.
It was their last name.
Right, but what does it really mean?
Probably a metaphor for something.
Yeah, I didn't
Definitely
get that.
came
It was,
from.
it was two different strands of the black population that
Yeah.
landed in adjacent places.
I thought it was part of the fun that he had, McBride, in view of heaven and hell, heaven and earth.
Right, yeah,
Just a
I
little-
thought it was connected
Just
somehow.
a little
but
tweak.
It never fell,
Yeah.
that never fell into place.
So maybe their spirituality was a little closer to earth.
Yeah,
I mean, the mention of Native Americans would come only when you really were reading about the Logods. They seem to have more of a connection to the land and to their ancestors. That's what I
He gives you a
think.
lot to think about in a little bit of space, and it was always interesting.
Yeah.
And I thought it was pretty easy to follow. I could keep all those characters pretty much straight. If I had to go back and look up one, I could
Yeah.
somehow seem to find it. It was just so easy to read those little short chapters. I liked it a lot. I
And
enjoyed it.
each character had something unique that you could kind of like latch onto. Like Fatty was a great character, even though he had a lot going on in the story. It was sort of easy to remember who he was and his sidekick, or he was the sidekick of Big Soap. And so there were relationships that were so important in this, and I think that goes to the affection Malcolm brought up, that there was a lot of affection running through the stories.
Right. You felt real community there.
Yeah, people took care of each other.
Exactly.
When you mention relationships, I think when Hannah is dying and the relationship between her, the love that Moshe had with her, I mean, you really felt it. I mean, it was like, he was really affected by it. I mean, it just, that got to me. Yes.
Oh, he He wanted to move
He
down
adored
with the
her.
rest of the Jews
Yeah.
into the city or the town. He wanted to, have her not have to work in this grocery store.
Right.
But whatever she wanted, that's what happened. Yeah,
Just like
yeah.
There was also a real sense of community among everybody. Everybody knew everybody else. They might live in another town or up the hill or down the hill, but this was not an anonymous town where, people were wandering around and didn't know who they were. But I think the knowledge that people had of each other really speaks for living in a small town, being in a small town and knowing what's happening, not feeling.
Even when you think nobody knows what's happening, everybody knows what's happening. How many of these people walking past Doc Roberts after the incident, looking right at him, they knew what was
Right,
happening.
Right.
And he knew they knew, even though he wanted to play it off. And then, what's his name, Pritzker, the dairy
Gus was-
councilman running
Mayor,
everything,
yeah.
right? Yeah, he was trying to play his politics
I
too.
think it is interesting to me, McBride's ease as a writer with weaving among and between his Jewish background and his black background. He is extraordinary, I think, in his ability to convincingly craft his character, both Jewish and black characters. And, it's a function of his growing up.
Right. That's for, if you've read The Color of Water, he talks a lot about his Jewish mom in his memoir. I mean, that's basically his whole memoir is about his relationship with his mother.
If I can piggyback on that, I just think also it's interesting how he breaks out into the contemporary and where his real where he's about with this novel. Right on page 27, that first exchange. Moshe's become wealthier. He wants to move downtown to a new house. I'm on 26. And he says, we can put up a grocery store near it. And she says, Anna jumps, I don't want a house downtown, et cetera, and so forth.
Mhm.
But the Jews are leaving Chicken Hill. Here's where you get to. Really, 10 blocks from here is leaving, she says. You know what I mean. Let's go where they are. They're our people. Moshe, I like it here. I grew up in this house. The postman knows where I live. So just knowing where you are is a big deal in this story. Exasperated Moshe. Down the hill is America, he's saying. And she's saying, America is here.
Right.
And so the spin on the title, Heaven and Earth, grocery, I sort of read it as heaven as on earth, grocery. That is community. This is our town. And I think of that throwback to that play, that wistful. This is nostalgia laden as well as very critically contemporary. There's all kinds of satire, especially in the Memorial Day parade. That's hilarious. Those passages there to me are hilarious about
The fire truck breaking down, the horse running loose, and the
red
jackets
red
and
jackets and the blue
right.
jackets, right.
and all the Jews who haven't been taken care of. The
trumpet sonatas.
Yeah, that was,
There's a run-on passages. He is also, interestingly, a jazz musician, and his writing is jazz. So you got to sort of take it as it comes.
You feel the rhythms of it,
Oh, yeah.
which made me also think of Jewish folklore. Well, even Ivy
Klezmer,
Singer.
blues.
Ivy
Yeah.
Singer or other Black American writers who, there's a rhythm to this, and I thought, well, that is really interesting because he seems to have summed it up from both sides so nicely. And maybe he did feel more at ease speaking to both populations in this book because of his background, because of his genes. I really don't know if we would be as accepting of other Black American writers writing about Jewish themes, but I'd like to think so. I don't know, I think he feels very comfortable.
I thought he was also very clever in some of the symbolism he used, that, you know, the doctor dies in water, and water is a theme of this. You know, the need for water, the need for, its mission accomplished as far as he's concerned on this book.
Yeah, I like those water images too. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Oh, yeah. He's very clever. You know, why would it be that a fire truck would break up this whole fancy parade and this absolutely ridiculous ceremony? I mean, he throws it in your face, and he's laughing at you if you take it seriously. And he's very clever.
I like that a lot. I wonder, from Hannah's character, more about her background, and I thought about that later, and I don't think you learn very much about her being raised by her father's a rabbi. Clearly, he started the shul, and he must not have minded her learning. He had to have known how much she studied. I don't know if he just turned a blind eye to her going through the Talmud or what, but you know, there's one scene where they're walking to shul and holding hands and singing the song that is sort of bubbling up in her when she's in a coma. And you think, well, is that where she learned to be so accepting and comfortable? And you know, where did she come from when everyone around her is being socialized to really stick with their own and look down on other people?
But wasn't she alone a lot? She was alone. She didn't have a lot of friends.
She had Bernice.
Pardon?
Bernice, right.
Yeah.
She wasn't accepted.
Betty's sister.
So she sat and she read. She read everything she could. And that's where she learned.
There are studies that show that readers have high, was it social empathy or emotional IQ? That idea of being able to step in others' shoes easily.
Yeah.
That I like that idea.
Yeah.
Because I wondered, how does she turn out just to be the saint that she is? Because she is the hero of the story.
She loved to learn. According to the book, she loved to learn because nobody else accepted her. She was alone a lot. And once she started to read, she started soaking up this information.
And shared some of that with Dodo. I thought about that when Monkey Pants and he were developing their coded communication system, and even under all the medication that they were being given, they figured out, and I thought, thank goodness, he was sort of reading a lot more, at least when he was staying with them, because I don't think he went to school much after his accident.
No. Didn't she give him things to read? Or he liked
The comic books.
Or
And
he liked her so much, and he saw her reading that he decided he wanted to do the same thing.
Or even if he didn't like it so much, he's going to do it, make it look like he's reading while she's there, and then he really would rather be playing with his marbles and sticks in the back.
How about the symbolism of the marble?
So,
That's great.
where did Monkey Pants come from? When he said my mother, that's one piece that I wasn't satisfied that we really never learned.
I think he was again a bit of legerdemain on the part of McBride. He put in a character that couldn't be ignored, but was central to the end of the book, and he made him a hero in the most unlikely ways. Very clever.
Right. He saved him, right? Yeah, the marble definitely connected them in a way.
But he set you up earlier with, when he's in the grocery store in the
With
basement
the marbles.
with the marbles. And he's devious.
And you knew that either Monkey Pants had to be rescued also, or he wasn't going to live. So
Well, it's a
you
different-
knew there was no in-between there. They were not going to leave that child.
It's a different book if Monkey Pants leaves.
Right, right. So he saves his, I don't know if he saves his life, but saves him from the extreme trauma, and dies. Yeah. All right, I felt a little something at that part too.
I just wanted to say this that I spoke to you about.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of started the book, and in the, I think it was second or third chapter, Moshe has this theater, and he's waiting for Mickey Katz from band from Cleveland to come.
Yes.
And of course, there was a real Mickey Katz, and he is the father of Joel Gray.
Right.
I don't know
Right,
if you all
I
know
knew
this.
that, yeah.
Joel Gray was Joel Katz at Heights High School.
And Jennifer Gray,
Yes.
who was baby.
Yes.
Right.
Huh, I didn't know that.
I did.
Hello, Cleveland history. I knew some of the other acts that he was booking
Yeah,
were real
yeah,
life, and I
yeah,
thought,
he
I just
was.
assumed Mickey was too,
Yeah.
but that is a connection I did not know
And when
before.
that name popped up, I said, oh my gosh.
McBride acknowledged his affection for Ohio, having spent time and years in
Oberlin, yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
that's good. Yeah, I think that it was great for him to include, some of these characters from the mental hospital if his inspiration was the disabilities camp that he was a counselor at. And that way, there were more ties to that inspiration. But the Psy friend that he talks about as his inspiration was the one who ran the camp. He was a principal during the school year and ran this camp in, was it the Catskills or?
Yeah.
For kids with disabilities. And that's little piece at the end. It is very short, but I'm glad he put it in there. I'm glad that there was some explanation of the spark for this book. And also an acknowledgement that books kind of have a life of their own. They start going in their own direction as you talk to more people and learn more history or all the research he was doing. But I think he was true to that character when he talks about him, was also gay, apparently, in a time when he probably couldn't live out. And was like way ahead of his time in terms of diversity and living with equality as one of his values. Respected that piece of it. Oh, go ahead, Jody.
Well, I didn't finish the book, and I just did the, very early parts of it, but I want you all to know that it's amazing to hear your discussion and so motivating to go ahead and read the whole book, even though I'll probably be not finishing the next book. But I'm going to read this book.
I'm glad to hear.
I second that because I didn't get the book. But I read it.
We had 2 months to read it, it's
Yeah.
good. That's why I
read it on a
ended
trip,
up finishing.
and of course, when you're on a trip, I just didn't read at all. I mean, maybe the newspaper.
Pages and then you
Yeah.
forget what you read.
So I totally missed the book, but I will not miss it.
Yeah. It was worth every minute of it to me. I rarely read a book that I don't get something out of. I'm not very good at saying, oh, I just really dislike that book, but I'm kind of picky what I start to begin with. It's like Jane had a very nice bit of write-up in her email about like what an avid reader I am. I have been talking to Jane about books for at least a decade, like when she worked at Apple Tree I sort of had a problem, and I'm working really hard to like use the library more, but I do have a book buying problem. And there's stacks at home that I can't,
Same here.
I get to, because there's always new stuff coming out, and
It's fun to go there,
Yeah.
and I like it.
Yeah.
But Jane makes it so easy for us to use this library, and it's just great. I asked her about a book I needed that the students I was giving a tour to at the malls had read, and she didn't have it, and she ordered it for me, and it was here 2 days later.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to
She'll
buy
do
it.
that, right?
It was kind of a teenage thing, you know.
I think
And it
the
was
library's
great.
in great shape now.
It
It's been
is.
very
And
organized
she's so easy to
and,
work with. It's great. You can just phone her and she'll hold it for you or put it at the front desk, whatever.
Your public libraries do that also,
Yeah,
so.
right, but I'm here more often than I am in other libraries.
yeah.
Our temple is lucky to have a library. That's
Right.
incredible. I don't think any other temple, at least in the area, maybe in the United States, it's a great one.
Well, because of the history here, having an archivist is really important too.
Yeah.
So
Right.
she checks all the boxes. Yeah, very enthusiastic.
Actually, a family friend of ours, Mary Lycan, goes back. She started it down at,
Oh, at the old
of the old,
branch?
yes, for years and years she was there. She probably knows who she is. So,
Well, kudos to her because it's thriving.
it's good.
Yeah, it was a good idea.
Patty,
Well,
are
yeah.
you gonna, is the social justice, or is the racial justice committee, are you gonna do this again in the future, have a book that kind of covers both the regular book discussion group and your book discussion? Because I thought it was a good idea.
Right, so the book discussion we did for 3 years. And I sort of like phased that out to put more energy into the task force. So I co-chair the task force with David Miller. And we have a small committee, some members are here. We are really more focused on collaborating with other groups this year. We aren't actually an affiliate. We're not technically a committee here. I don't know what you have to do to be a committee, but anyways,
Neither do I.
40 years from now, I'll find out. So for right now, we're just trying to infiltrate other groups, and we did this a little bit before. Barbara Kuby was great. She just like picked the ball up and ran with it. She said, let's collaborate, and she put together a whole tour at the Coates Bates house, and that went very well. I don't know if our Karamu outing wasn't really coordinated with another group, but Jane and I talked about this a long time ago, like 6 months ago, and like, let's pick a book and let's work together. And when I saw this was coming out early August, which maybe it was like June or May, I was calling her, this is it, this is it, we need to talk about this book. And I'll probably do something I did with Rabbi Klein a couple years ago when I was still doing the book discussion group, but I'll take over one of his poetry sessions, and we talked about Tracy K. Smith's poems, one poetry Thursday afternoon with his poetry sessions. So they're started back up again, so maybe in the spring we'll do that. But we're just trying to work with other groups and not stage a lot of stuff ourselves. That way we're everywhere.
Well, but there's also January, which is a very, you said you're looking for a book for January.
Yeah, well, that's Jane. Jane's, she does a monthly,
Okay.
and normally
That-
Wednesdays.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
So I wouldn't have been able to
No.
participate. She moved this so I
I got you.
could do that. I'm gonna be joining you retirees, like 3 years.
Oh.
3 years. I'm gonna come the middle of the day.
Who's counting the
Yeah,
hours?
the
right?
months, right. Well,
Well,
thank you, everybody, for coming. It was a rich discussion. I appreciate it.
Good choice of book. This is, yeah, she announced it. This is
Number one,
Is it the 13th of January?
trying to
December.
card.
Right. Yeah, December 13th.
County.
Poorly.
We went to New Orleans.
I don't know.
yesterday.
And
They do beautiful.
I don't know what she's gonna But it's the book, and I think she has other copies of this, which you can go in there and fill out.
So when is it due?
It was.
Oh,
But you can see if there are books on the table.
but they don't charge, you know, they do in Florida.
Well,
Well, if they didn't charge fines for senior citizens in Florida, they wouldn't shut it.
it's true.
Well,
Take it.
can I mean, it'll take me 10 minutes to read it.
Yeah, and just drop it off.
Yeah, and then I'll just, you're done with it, so I'll just take a second. Yeah, I heard about it, it was on CBS Morning too. Well, his son is just like to see it, she saw the next. So she got him to, they took his.
The other thing that was equally important,